My name is Michael, and I never imagined that attending my stepdaughter's wedding would become one of the most intense, emotional, and defining days of my life because it all started months earlier when I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. The way she avoided my calls, the way she hesitated to include me in conversations about the big day. And at first I brushed it off, thinking it was just wedding stress, but deep down, I felt the unease growing like a storm on the horizon. And a week before the ceremony, I overheard her talking on the phone with her mother-in-law, whispering about excluding me from certain parts of the wedding, saying things like, "Dad doesn't need to know this. Let's keep him out of it." And I felt a cold pit open in my stomach, because for years I had been there for her, helping with school projects, driving her to appointments, giving advice, supporting her emotionally, and now, someone she called family was actively conspiring to hide things from me on what should have been one of the happiest days of her life. And I couldn't let it go, not because I wanted to sabotage her happiness, but because I knew that if I stayed silent, if I let myself be marginalized in front of everyone, it would set a precedent that she could disregard me, and worse, that the people who truly mattered in my family could think it was acceptable to treat someone who had loved and supported them as an outsider. And the morning of the wedding arrived, the air thick with excitement, nerves, and tension. And I received a text from her. Curt, polite yet pointed. "Michael, please respect our wishes. Certain parts of the wedding are for immediate family only." I stared at the words, my hands trembling slightly, feeling a mixture of hurt, shock, and quiet fury, because the person I had raised, guided, and supported was actively excluding me. And I called my wife, Linda, hoping she could provide context, or at least calm my emotions, and she said softly, "Michael, I know this is hard, but she's trying to handle things on her own. Trust me, she doesn't mean to hurt you." But I realized in that moment that trust alone wouldn't solve this. That love alone wouldn't make someone consider the sacrifices, the time, the care, and the presence I had invested over the years. And I decided that day that I would attend, not as an intruder, not as an aggressor, but as someone who had earned the right to witness the culmination of her life's achievements and milestones. And as I arrived at the venue, the sprawling hall decorated with flowers, candles, and soft golden lighting, I could see the guests milling about, laughter echoing, cameras clicking, yet every step I took reminded me that my stepdaughter had attempted to erase my presence. And I felt a surge of determination to assert my place calmly, respectfully but unmistakably, and I positioned myself at the edge of the room, observing, noting, and waiting for the right moment. Because in my 45 years of navigating life's challenges, I had learned that timing, patience, and strategy could achieve more than confrontation alone, and as the ceremony began, I noticed subtle exchanges, whispered instructions, and slight hesitations from the wedding planners and family members, all indicating that my presence was meant to be peripheral, invisible, and yet I could feel the weight of their awareness. And when the music shifted and my stepdaughter, Emma, began her walk down the aisle, I noticed she glanced at the side where I was standing and quickly looked away, pretending not to see me, and I felt that familiar pang of exclusion. But I reminded myself to breathe, to stay composed, to act with dignity, because the moment I lost my temper would be remembered longer than the truth of my presence. And when she reached the altar, I saw her soon-to-be husband, Thomas, beaming, oblivious to the underlying tension, and the officiant began the ceremony, the words flowing, vows being exchanged, and I realized that the decision I had made to be present, to assert my quiet authority, was already shifting the energy in the room. Because while some people had expected me to stay in the shadows, my calm, confident presence was impossible to ignore. And midway through the vows, when Thomas asked if anyone present objected to the union, I knew in that instant that I had the opportunity to intervene, not to disrupt, not to humiliate, but to reveal the hidden truth that had been carefully concealed from me. And I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and said clearly, "I'm Michael, Emma's stepfather, and there's something everyone needs to know." And the room froze. The murmur of excitement replaced by a stunned silence, guests whispering, cameras clicking as I continued. "I've supported Emma for years, through school projects, late-night crises, emotional struggles, and every milestone leading up to this day. Yet certain people tried to hide important information from me about her wedding, assuming I would be excluded, that my love and investment in her life could be disregarded. And I will not allow that to happen quietly. And the shock in her eyes, the color draining from her face, mirrored the gasps and murmurs around the room, because no one had anticipated that the stepfather they had dismissed, ignored, and underestimated would assert himself in such a visible, dignified way. And I continued carefully, deliberately, "Emma, this day is about you and I love you. But I need everyone to see that love is not conditional on secrecy, exclusion, or manipulation. I am here, I am present, and my role in your life cannot be erased. And neither can the truth." And Thomas looked confused. Emma's mother sat rigid in her chair, and a few of the closest relatives whispered among themselves, realizing that the wedding day they thought was carefully controlled had been subtly disrupted, not by anger or hostility, but by unwavering integrity and the courage to speak. And as I finished, I stepped back, letting silence fill the room, giving Emma the chance to respond, to acknowledge, to realize that exclusion was not a shield against truth. And for a long moment she didn't speak, looking down, then at me, then at the faces of friends and family, and finally whispered, "Michael, I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I'm sorry." And the officiant paused, the guests leaning in, and I smiled softly, nodding, acknowledging the apology while maintaining my dignity, because the goal was never to shame, but to reveal, to ensure honesty and respect. And the rest of the ceremony proceeded, slower now, heavier with awareness, and when they exchanged vows, it felt different, deeper, because the tension had shifted, because the truth had been spoken. And afterward, at the reception, guests approached me, some with congratulations, some with questions, all reflecting the awareness that a line had been drawn, that love cannot be fully expressed while hiding, excluding, or manipulating those who have earned their place. And Emma, still shaken, approached me privately, tears in her eyes, and I held her hands gently, saying, "I love you. Nothing you do or plan can change that. But I need you to see me, to include me honestly, as part of your life." And she nodded, the realization settling in, that attempting to erase someone who truly cares only strengthens the bond when addressed with courage and respect. And over the next few weeks, our relationship changed, subtly but profoundly, as she began including me in family discussions, seeking advice, inviting me into moments that she had previously tried to control. And I realized that the impact of that day, the bold step to speak at the altar, had shifted not only how she viewed me, but how the entire family regarded my presence, my love, and my contributions. And in reflecting on it, I understood that sometimes the most dramatic moments of truth, when delivered calmly, clearly, and with integrity, can transform relationships, expose hidden dynamics, and establish boundaries, respect, and acknowledgement. Because while weddings are about love and celebration, they are also about family, trust, and honesty. And no amount of planning or exclusion can replace the courage to speak the truth, to claim one's rightful place, and to ensure that love is recognized, respected, and valued. And as I sit now, weeks after the wedding, watching Emma and Thomas navigate married life, I feel a quiet satisfaction knowing that I didn't let myself be marginalized, that I stood up not in anger but in principle, and that the lessons she learned that day, the awareness of how actions affect others, the value of honesty and inclusion, will stay with her for life, just as the bond between us, tested in fire but preserved through courage and respect, has grown stronger, unbreakable, and undeniable.